Welcome back to another episode of The Animates. This week, we watched a show about cows called The Cowboys of Moo Mesa.
Darn tootin'.
Darn tootin' indeed.
That's all the southern slang I have. That's all I've got.
That's all they have in the show.
Yeah.
So don't worry too much. It's been an interesting Western-themed summer for me because I played Red Dead Redemption 2 back in August, and it's consumed my existence since. So I have jumped from gritty realism of Red Dead Redemption into singing literal cow boy. And it was quite a contrast. And last night I actually watched the film Bone Tomahawk, which is an incredibly violent film, also set in the West. So a nice sort of sandwich of Western content over the last few months. This being the most cheerful.
I'd say in response to that, I'm not super familiar with Red Dead actually, but I do have some experience. When I think of it, do you know the YouTube channel Binging with Babish?
I do not.
So he recreates food and dishes from various media and shows. And there's one episode where he recreated the bear stew from Red Dead 2.
Oh, I think I have seen this actually. I watched a video of a guy recreating the stew. Yeah, it must have been that one.
Yeah. Out in the woods with a Dutch oven.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when I think of violent westerns, have you seen The Hateful Eight, Quentin Tarantino?
I have seen The Hateful Eight, yes.
That's the one I tend to go to. I haven't seen Bone Tomahawk, but I imagine it's a similar vibe.
It's got Kurt Russell again. So it's
Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah, kind of. Bone Tomahawk is very quiet for the first sort of 2/3 of the film, and then in the last third it just really escalates very quickly. Good film.
Oh darn.
But
All
the
all
tone
of
of
Far
this
Cry.
show is not very similar.
No.
Give me that guitar. Music time's over.
Whoa, whoa, whoa!
So honestly, I was pretty surprised by the show. I kind of liked it.
It was pretty wholesome. I didn't know what
Yeah.
to expect going in. It's interesting that we've watched another animal subculture series already.
They're fun. There's a lot of them. Gosh, yeah, character designs are pretty good. Besides the fact that I think that cows riding horses is a little bit cursed.
Yeah, that is an odd concept.
I just don't really know what else they would ride. You got your alliterative main characters, Marshall Moo Mesa, the Colorado Kid, and Deputy Dakota, and they kind of just really neatly fill those niches of the leader, the goofball, and the tough one. But they're they're relatively likable. They're not as bland as they could be. They got some stuff going on.
They're more interested than the Street Sharks.
Yeah, that's maybe not a high bar to clear, but I like them. They sing.
They do sing.
I think
Surprisingly, the song was quite catchy that they opened the series with.
Yeah, it's a good song and it's a well animated little battle sequence with the bad guys, who I think are also pretty neat.
The character designs and the animation is also quite nice. It's not like it doesn't blow me away spectacular, but I wasn't expecting it to be particularly good, and it's actually pretty fun and creative.
Yeah,
Lends itself
I
well to
know.
the show.
Yeah, I know season two is handled by a different studio, that being Ruby Spheres, which is the Canadian company that made the Mega Man cartoon and I think the Darkstalkers cartoon. They did a lot of video game animated series, and I
Okay.
don't expect them to have quite the same par of quality. I haven't watched any of those episodes though.
No, neither did I.
So.
Yeah, maybe
I
they
just
will.
kind of neither of us had seen the show, so I kind of cherry picked three that had interesting sounding Wikipedia summaries. But I think I ended up picking pretty good choices.
I really enjoyed the wedding episode that we watched.
That one was great.
I loved
Um,
like an escalation of plot within a couple of minutes. Just really, just one thing after another, this massive snowball effect. And I was like, oh, this is pretty interesting, actually.
Yeah. What I think the show really has going for it that lends itself well to that kind of plot is that it is kind of a civil conflict within one law, in that the main villain is the mayor of the town that the deputies all work for, and they kind of have to very subtly and almost like passive aggressively work against him. I think that's a very fun complex, especially for a kids show. You wouldn't see that all the time.
Yeah, I was very surprised when the mayor was, well, I wasn't surprised because the mayor walks out and he's like, the music changes and goes very sinister.
Oh, yes.
The mayor is like, well, thank you, boys, for protecting the bank, which some of my own money was in. Oh, we're so glad to have you here. And then
he's pretty.
He's like revealed to be the bad guy. And throughout that scene, I was like, this mayor seems like a very dodgy character.
Mayor Bologna, which wonderful name.
Well, we were just staying true to the code of the West, Mayor. That's our job. Protecting the innocent and good folk of Moo Mesa from those varmints that would perpetrate evil. Sorry, I get riled up just thinking about it.
Me too.
Some of the episodes, that the concepts were quite surprising. Like, someone has to get married before sundown, otherwise they're going to lose the ranch. And they've taken the postman hostage and he's got all the letters, so they can't prove that her dad's still alive, but she needs to have the wedding before sunrise. It was surprisingly unique for such a, I don't want to say it's a stupid concept for a series, because
like
cowboys
a kid,
being
kind of a
literal
kid
cowboys.
show.
Yeah.
You wouldn't see like a time sensitive relational, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a commentary on antiquated laws leading to corrupt power, for one thing.
Yeah.
And then like a time sensitive race over a relatively like emotionally complex thing, that is forcing yourself into a relationship for a family entitlement, because the Calamity Jane character is who she is a very independent woman, and to protect her, it's a gold mine, I think, or something like that, or ranch, to protect that property she has to be married off. And it's actually like a surprisingly, it gives a shocking amount of agency, I think, to a female character that you don't always get in these. And a lot of it's kind of a neat complex too, how she and her groom-to-be, who's Deputy Dakota from the main group, do like each other, but the show kind of acknowledges you can like someone and not want to jump into marriage right away, which like I don't think all kids shows would do.
Am I late?
Yep. I'm real glad you were. This gal wasn't really ready to get hitched yet.
Yep. Me too.
But you're one special cowboy.
You know I'd always help you if I could, Miss Kate. Like the code of the West says, doing right is its own reward.
On the subject of the potential of human cows, I think one thing that was a little uncanny.
Potential of human cows.
I mean,
So I'll tell you something Alex Jones would say on a podcast.
They're turning people into cows in this Moo Mesa lab. I've got videos of it. They're wearing pants and cowboy outfits.
Thank you, Alex Jones. Very cool. What struck me was that the female cows, or I suppose it's redundant to say female cows. We should be calling the rest of them bulls.
Oh, yeah.
But regardless, the female cows run like the saloon, and that just reads to me like the subtext of that is that they have to be prostitutes, because in the Old West, that's what women like who ran saloons did. And I don't say that disparagingly, because cowboys as we know them in media really weren't a thing. It was really prostitution that brought great economy to the West. I'm not even like riffing when I say that.
Yeah, I've been stunned into silence by that revelation, to be honest. We've leapt from Alex Jones to prostitution in the space of a few seconds. And it's an astounding covering of topics this week.
I suppose what I just want to say is if those implications are any way flung onto these cow characters, they would have been better off humans.
Well, we can only hope that Calamity Jane is not. I'm
Yeah,
not sure I want to finish the sentence. Let's.
We're the cowboys of Moo Mesa. We uphold the code of the West. Since the comet done come down,
Raise Moo Mesa from the ground.
we walk, talk, and ride like all the rest.
Okay, according to Wikipedia, an irradiated comet struck the late 19th century Western Plains, creating a miles-high mesa shrouded in clouds. Everything trapped on top of the mesa was cowmatized by the light of the cowmet and evolved into a bovimorphic state. So apparently, this was not well conveyed by the content of the show itself, maybe just
really
vaguely
wasn't.
by the theme song. I feel like this chunk of the podcast could be edited to go to the start because it would answer a lot of questions.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe we should do that. So apparently a comet struck Earth, lifted a plateau of Earth rock into the sky, and turned everyone on that into cows.
Is that plateau still in the sky? Is this series set miles in the sky?
I guess so. However, they're not.
Wouldn't they just ride to the end of the land and fall to their deaths?
I suppose flat Earth does play in at some point.
We're circling back to Alex Jones territory again. Although I'm pretty sure he's not a flat earther. I'll give him that.
Oh, thank God.
I wouldn't play those 5 aces, Mayor.
What? Well, how did they get in there? Naughty things. Gentlemen, if you'll excuse me, I have some laws to write. Yes.
I wonder who keeps voting him in as mayor.
Good question. I think it's like Nixon in Futurama. How he just has some comment. Nixon always wins.
Arrow.
Did I ever tell you the story of how
You met Richard Nixon?
I could tell you the story of how these are both like third-hand stories. Have you heard the story first of Matt Groening meeting Richard Nixon and growing to hate him based on that interaction?
No, I don't think I have, weirdly.
So when Nixon was in office, I think Groening was like a kid, and Groening and his dad were on their way into a restaurant, and Nixon was on his way out, and they like ran into each other, and they kind of shook hands, like, "Thank you, yes, nice to meet you, Mr. President." And Nixon goes, "Yes, you're about," like, as they walk into the restaurant, he goes, "Try the duck, it's delicious." And they go in, and Matt orders the duck, and they don't serve it there. And since then, he held a grudge against Nixon.
Why would Nixon do this?
I don't know. It's like, were they like, "Oh, he's the president, we gotta get him what he wants," like, or it was like, just give him chicken, he'll think it's duck.
Maybe that was the case. I'll have the duck. Actually, Mr. President, shh, just give him chicken. Delicious
there's
duck,
the story.
best I've ever had.
There's the story of how Billy West, who is Fry and Nixon on Futurama, would watch Nixon debates on TV as a kid, and like the camera would zoom in on him and show his like 5 o'clock shadow, like his vague whiskers, and he would always associate Nixon as looking like a werewolf, and that's why he gives Nixon that like the animalistic howling noise when he imitates him.
I did not realize that. I've never come across that anecdote before. Interesting.
Yeah.
I did always wonder where it came from. I wondered if it was a noise that Nixon made that I just something that he did. But interesting.
As he was being pulled out of the White House after being impeached, just and howling. Well, that was Wild West Cowboys of Moo Mesa.
A broad spectrum of political figures were covered in this week's episode. Tune in next week, where we review Stalin, the animated series.
Nixon's back!